Hello there, movie fans and podcast lovers, and welcome back to the very first Cinema Classics of 2026. And in a very appropriate style, Cinema Classics is looking at cinema itself as we examine the Hollywood-centric movie Sunset Boulevard. I am regular host Michael Wilson. Hello. And we were going to be joined by a couple of guests today, but unfortunately we have had a dropout. So it's just me and one other guest, but thankfully, with the trademark German efficiency and reliability, I am pleased to welcome back a regular guest, Tobi. Welcome.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me back. I mean, I did jump on this also pretty spontaneously.
Yeah, it was a very last minute sort of replacement for something anyway, because I've had all kinds of. It was going to be a different episode, and then something else happened, and then my co-host wasn't available, and so it's going to be very last minute, and it's going to be a very quick edit for me to do. But hopefully, it'll turn out all right. I know I've definitely got lots to say about this film and lots of things we can get into, and yeah, looking forward to it. You ready to talk Sunset Boulevard?
Yeah, we get through it somehow.
Yeah, we'll manage. So. Bear with us if we're a little bit rusty because it has been a while since we recorded. But yeah, just to jump quickly straight in with a little tiny bit of backstory about the movie. Sunset Boulevard is a 1950 American dark comedy film noir directed by Billy Wilder and co-written by Wilder, Charles Brackett, and D.M. Marshman Jr. It's named for a major street that runs through Hollywood and Western Los Angeles for reasons that will become apparent when we get into the BTS section. The film stars William Holden as Joe Gillis, a struggling screenwriter, and Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond, former silent film star who draws him into her deranged fantasy world where she dreams of making a triumphant return to the screen. So, yeah, I have to say, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time that either of us have seen this movie. We hadn't watched it before the podcast.
Yeah, I haven't seen it before.
So, I mean, normally I would ask, what were your first impressions? Can you remember the first time you saw the movie? But obviously it's, very recent, probably only a couple of days ago in your case. So we don't need to ask that. But I will say, do you have any kind of spoiler-free first impressions? Did you know anything about the movie going in, or was it completely new to you?
I didn't know anything at all. So I can't really talk about expectations or anything because of that. I knew it existed, so it wasn't like I never heard of this movie before, but outside of the name and being that it's famous and very well liked.
And so there wasn't really you were bringing any kind of knowledge of the movie or something you wanted to look at. Just, we'll do that. So that's cool. So it really is just a completely new discovery for you. So that's kind of cool in a way. Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've seen this movie, but I am aware of it. It's one of those films where certain scenes and lines of dialogue and stuff just kind of seem to have permeated culture. So I did know about, the odd clip and the odd famous bit of dialogue and stuff. And weirdly enough, what prompted me to put it on the list for this year, a couple of things, actually. First of all, I was watching a random podcast with actually some fairly blokey Australian guys, weirdly enough, who were talking about this movie and how it's famous and they'd all seen it. Plumbing the Death Star, if anybody's curious, is the name of the podcast. And I was like, I've never seen that. And I called myself a movie fan, so I probably should. And I put it on my kind of Amazon wish list that I always have. And then my sister randomly bought it for me for my birthday last year. So I was like, well, now I've got to cover it on the podcast. So yeah, I had the Blu-ray handy.
The podcast.
Exactly, yeah. So I thought, well, I know vague things about it, and I obviously know it's famous, and I'd heard, like I said, from these other kind of film fan nerd types that they obviously thought it was very good and a seminal work that you should see. So I went into this with kind of those expectations and hoping for the best, I guess, for a really great experience. And we'll see what I thought about it as we go on, and then at the end when I give my conclusion and stuff. So,
I mean, very good is kind of an understatement for its reputation.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah. Well, yeah, in that case, I'll jump on to the next section, which is the behind the scenes. I've tried not to overload it too much. And I've got other things as we hit the individual sections as we go. If you're a regular listener, you'll know what they are, but I'll explain them as we hit them. So, yeah, first of all, just for the behind the scenes, as a young man living in Berlin in the 1920s, Billy Wilder was interested in American culture with much of his interest fueled by the country's films. In the late 1940s, many of the grand Hollywood houses remained, and Wilder, who was then a Los Angeles resident, found them to be part of his everyday world. Many former stars from the silent era still lived in them, although most were no longer involved in the film business. Wilder wondered how they spent their time now that, quote, the parade had passed them by, to quote the movie, and began imagining the story of a star who had lost her celebrity and box office appeal. And that's where the film gets its name from, Sunset Boulevard being one of those streets that was full of, luxurious Hollywood houses where the former film stars lived. So, the original edit of the movie opened with a scene inside of a morgue with the assembled corpses discussing how they came to be there. The corpse of Joe Gillis recounting his murder to the others. Preview audiences reacted with laughter and seemed unsure whether to view the rest of the film as drama or comedy, and thus the morgue opening was replaced by the shorter, now iconic poolside opening. So, yeah. I am getting, as I do my notes and things, I am kind of getting the sense that there's a bit of uncertainty as to the genre and whether you're supposed to be laughing at this, even in the final movie, but again, we'll probably touch on that a little bit.
That's a very funny opening scene to do in the original version.
Yeah, there's things like that throughout, though, because there's so many sort of scenes where it's kind of like, do you laugh? It's kind of darkly comic, but also,
it's a dark comedy.
So. Exactly, yeah. Fair enough. And just a little bit about the response to the movie. In Hollywood, Paramount arranged a private screening for the various studio heads and specially invited guests. After viewing the film, Barbara Stanwyck knelt to kiss the hem of Gloria Swanson's skirt. Swanson later remembered looking for Mary Pickford, only to be told, she can't show herself, Gloria, she's too overcome. We all are. Louis B. Mayer berated Wilder before the crowd of celebrities, saying, you have disgraced the industry that made and fed you. You should be tarred and feathered and run out of Hollywood. And according to eyewitnesses, the simple response that he got was, go F yourself. So there we go. Yeah, not really a whole lot to get into there, other than, like I said, we can't really speak to how authentic it is, but certainly a lot of Hollywood actors sort of recognized themselves in this perhaps a little bit more than was comfortable. So interesting to think that it might be a kind of realistic portrayal at times, considering how over the top it is and how kind of gross and horror-ish it is at times. Yeah,
I mean, I totally believe that it's realistic. I mean, I feel like certain things are still happening today. Where
in terms of like celebrity and fame,
stars get a little crazy.
Yeah,
more news at 8.
Yeah, exactly. And the paparazzi, as it were, have never changed the idea of like it's amazing how the people with a vendetta a few sort of headlines and stuff can absolutely wreck your life, and that's never really changed, has it? So and. Yeah, I have to say I did put that note in the Discord as well, which I may as well bring up, that when watching the movie, I was like, this is just the paparazzi music video by Lady Gaga. Especially at the end of the movie, I was like, hang on. And then Jenny pointed out, like, yeah, that's kind of what Lady Gaga based that on, so that's probably why. I was like, okay. That makes sense then, I suppose. So still pervading pop culture today. I guess it's still important. So, yeah. Absolutely. Did you have anything else about the behind the scenes that you found out in your kind of research or anything you wanted to add?
I mean, I didn't do much research. The only thing I knew is that that a lot of lists have it like as like a top 10 all-time movie, and I was like, oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's partly because Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood, though. So
I wasn't going to say this, but
yeah. Oh, it's been said for years. I remember the conversation around La La Land when it came out, which was like, it's a good movie, but it's only really getting, multiple Oscars and stuff because Hollywood just loves films about Hollywood. And that's, if you want to be guaranteed to be loved, that's what you've got to do, make a film about them. So, yeah, raging narcissists all. Anyway, so, we'll move to the next section then, which is going to be the writing, the plot of the film. And I'll start with a tiny bit of just dry facts. Only the first third of the script was written when filming began in early May 1949, and apparently Billy Wilder was unsure how the film would end, which I was surprised about because it really feels like a sort of whole piece and it's saying something, and obviously it begins where it ends. It's kind of circular in that way, and it explains itself as it goes. So are you surprised to hear that, Toby, or did you sense a little bit of uncertainty?
I can kind of see how that happened. I think, yeah. Because I think the ending could have gone in a lot of different ways to end the situation.
Right.
If you take out the opening shot with him getting killed, then just the beginning third is, I don't want to say generic, but it's just something that could have gone in a lot of different directions later on.
I see. See, I see what you're saying, but I don't know if I think that it could, because it feels like the ending is just so perfect for it that I kind of feel like it feels like it was always there, because I feel like there was no other way out other than what it says. And I love the ending. I think it's like I said, it comments so much on the whole thing that, this woman's been so lost in performance and everything, and in the end she just gets completely trapped in the illusion of it, and reality's entirely gone, and she's, the tragedy is that she's performance personified in that sort of moment at the very end. And I love the way that it ends so much that I can't fully accept that it wasn't planned. But if it wasn't, fair enough. I mean, it's great that they came up with that, I suppose, when they were going through.
I would probably say where her character goes, I would have to expect was somewhat in the plan. But I think the details of the ending of of the story of how it ended, I think could have gone in a lot of different ways. How she got trapped into the illusion. I think you could have gone in a lot of different ways to show that. So in that sense, I can kind of see how they weren't really sure in what way they were going to do it.
Yeah, and I think it also perhaps is to do with what you do with the other characters, particularly Joe, because his murder does kind of come out of nowhere, even though we've known, from the start of the movie that he's recounting this from the grave sort of thing. But when it happens, it still feels like, oh, right, okay, that explains that. But it still kind of comes out of nowhere. And there's moments where you're not sure if he's actually going to finally leave Norma and end up with, the other woman, as it were, the young woman that would perhaps be better for him, but she's also seeing his friend. And I will say I audibly groaned when she fell for him, because I was like, oh, of course she does. Of course the young, attractive woman's, falling in love with this guy, because, it's just such a cliche, really, isn't it? So, Did you get that sense when you were watching it, or were you not bothered by that?
I wasn't particularly bothered by that, no.
Okay.
No, not really. but I did think towards the end, going back to the discussion about how it was planned, I do think there's a point where where the pacing goes really fast towards the end.
Yeah.
I don't remember which scene it was exactly, but somewhere towards the end, it looked like, it's like the beginning of the third act or something. Then I looked how many minutes were left, and was like, it's only like 15 minutes left. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I made a similar observation, but kind of on the flip side when I was watching, which was that the middle section of the film for me kind of drags. But I mean, it's perhaps because I think it surprised me that the film is so focused, because it's literally only telling you two connected stories. It's only about Norma and then Joe, both in sort of her world and outside in Hollywood, and meeting the other woman and everything. But I mean, I'm just so used to films having so many multiple subplots and things nowadays that I'm kind of like, it probably feels like it drags to me because it's only telling this very contained thing, but it still takes 2 hours. There's times in the middle where I'm like, this does drag a bit. You're kind of reiterating the same points, I think, for me, and taking your time with it. Is that fair, do you think, or was that just me being, modern sensibilities looking at it?
I do think that's totally fair.
Yeah,
I would probably not really push it in the middle, but more like towards like the end of the first third, beginning of the second third, like around that time. I think that was for me the point was like, okay, where are we going? It's a little slow, but I think as soon as we get Betty more involved, I don't think it necessarily drags. But
no, that's the thing.
Don't ask me on the timeline on when that was in the movie. I don't remember.
No, I see what you're saying, but I think, like you said, by that point, it's kind of like it feels like the film spent so long focusing on Norma, which is understandable as the main character. But it's kind of it's reinforced the point, as I said, which I kind of already got from, there's so many different scenes of her emphasizing that she's lost in this kind of world and she only can exist in movies, and she's showing her old movies to Joe, and at one point does the kind of Charlie Chaplin performance for him and everything, and it feels like an awful lot of that. And then, as you said, when it gets to introducing Betty and like furthering the actual plot and the mystery of it, you're like, there's not very long left now. So you've not got long to wrap this up. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of those scenes are iconic for a reason, so you can't really criticize too much. But like I said, I would perhaps say, yeah, slight pacing issues with it, especially for a classic. But,
anyway. I agree.
Cool. Fair enough. In terms of the film itself, Wilder preferred to leave analysis of his screenplays and films to others. When he was asked if Sunset Boulevard was a black comedy, he replied, "No, just a picture." Of the seemingly odd genre mashup, screenwriter George Kurgo wrote in 1979 that the fusion of writer-director Billy Wilder's biting humor and the classic elements of film noir make for a strange kind of comedy as well as a strange kind of film noir. There are no belly laughs here, but there are certainly strangled giggles. At the pet chimp's midnight funeral, at Joe's discomforted acquiescence to the role of gigolo, at Norma's entertainments for her uneasy lover, and at the ritualized solemnity of Norma's waxworks card parties. So, I mean, that's one of the things I was going to say. There's obviously, it starts with this voiceover as a framing device, the dead narrator, in a similar style to the film American Beauty comes to mind as one of those things where it's, it's being narrated from beyond the grave. And that's very much like the film noir cliche type things. And even starting with, the poor dope boy was one at a pool. This is the tragedy of it. It's very sort of, film noir type stuff. Do you think the film needs those kind of film noir tropes and the voiceover, or
no? Like it was really getting annoying to me.
Right, got you. Yeah.
I mean, it's like listening to an audiobook.
Right.
Like, please stop with these words describing things in like weird adjectives. Like, please stop.
Yeah, that's very much a film noir thing.
Either I got used to it towards the end, or I think towards the end they did it less. I don't know. I want to say they did it less, but it might also be that just I was able to tune them out or something.
Yeah, I didn't particularly notice, but I didn't mind it. But then I'm used to watching an awful lot of kind of detective stories and film noir and stuff, so I'm kind of tuned to expect it, I think, a little bit more. And I knew going in that it was considered a film noir, even though I do think it's not quite a film noir. And it's, like I said, it is this weird mashup of genres where, okay, you can say it is a film noir, but like you said, I don't think it has to be. It feels like that's kind of a weird thing because the film's looking for an identity, which is another sort of slight criticism, because yes, it's a film noir, but it's also, like you said, it's trying to be a dark comedy. It's also just a straight up drama. At times it feels like a horror movie, the way that Norma's kind of, got this guy captured. There's a sort of, when I say horror, I mean sort of along the lines of Misery, stuff like that, horror thriller, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's kind of struggles for a genre, and the film noir stuff, I think, is kind of, it almost feels like a late addition to be like, well, let's call it a film noir. We'll add some of those tropes. And I don't know if it fully works for me, but I get it. It's become iconic for a reason as this big film noir mystery, but I don't think that's the focus of the movie personally.
Yeah, and pretty quickly I wasn't really invested into the mystery of it. Like okay, initially, obviously, if it presents you a mystery, you're going to be invested in the mystery. But I think I pretty quickly dropped that aspect for me while watching.
Yeah.
Like a couple minutes in, I wasn't, like, as soon as we get these two together, I wasn't really much looking at the mystery of it. And to be fair, the movie doesn't really try to be a mystery. Like, it presents the aspect in the beginning, but there's no, as the movie goes along, there's no mystery elements anymore. It's not like trying to lure you into, ooh, what could this be?
Yeah. Do you think it would have been more effective if it had done that, if it had spent some time building up kind of characters that might potentially have done it? Because, as I say, we know that Joe's dead and he's in the pool, but there's no real, like you said, mystery or any kind of, I don't know, sort of, you never question what happened. It seems like inevitable almost that we know who did it and we know what's going to happen. And would it have been better if it had built up other people that might have done it to him, like the sort of people that are chasing him at the start, or maybe Betty's fiance that because he's being close to her, or do you think that would have just confused things even more, perhaps?
I mean, I do love a good mystery, so I certainly wouldn't have minded it, but I don't think this movie necessarily needed that. I'm just saying, I don't think the mystery is the focus point, and the movie is very clear about that. I'm not saying that like the mystery element in the beginning needed to be removed or that it needed to be gone. I'm just saying, like, it's clearly not trying to be. It's just like this element in the beginning that just wants to capture your attention, and then this movie pretty quickly moves on from there. I mean, did it need that in the beginning? I don't know, but it didn't hurt it for me, certainly.
Oh, no, it works. And as you say, obviously it works a lot better than the original idea, because you go into the movie and it's kind of, it adds a bit of seriousness. You realize you're not supposed to be taking the whole thing as farce, I suppose, even if there are moments of dark comedy later on. So it gives you an immediate, like, oh, this is to be taken seriously. Somebody's dead and whatever. But as you said, then you kind of just almost forget it. It's almost at the back of your mind until it happens in the actual, at the end of the movie, and he says, oh, this is where we came in. And you're like, oh, yeah, that ties that up. But you weren't bothered about it for the previous kind of 2 hours, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, it works, as you say. It kind of brings things full circle in that way, which is nice. Anyway. Moving on then, the other thing I have about the writing is the dialogue for me, which I was a little bit kind of in two minds about, because it seems very heightened. It doesn't sound natural at all, especially Norma's dialogue is very exaggerated. And as you say, you've got Joe's voiceover, very stylized and like film noir tropey. And the whole film kind of feels a bit written. But then I kind of realized, I don't know if it was halfway through or somewhere along the way, like, especially Norma's dialogue, that's very deliberate, because she's living a performance, even in, when she's on her own and when she's not in the movies. She just wants to be living there so much that she's still performing. She's still a film star, being over the top and exaggerated. And, she emphasizes it by saying, like, I can say anything I want with my eyes, because, silent films, they didn't really have a chance to use dialogue or to get too into things. And I think that's why she's kind of larger than life. And it kind of fits the theme very perfectly when you realize that's what they're doing. But it did take me a minute or two to, a bit longer than that, to adjust to what was happening there. What do you think about the kind of the dialogue and the way that, does it ever tip into kind of parody for you? Is it ever too over the top, or do you get what they were going for?
No, I don't think it's too over the top. I think Norma is less over the top and more kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like it's over the top in a horror sense of over the top, like in like a horror camp kind of way. But it's scary. I think she has a great scary performance. Like she is really scary. At times she is really scary. I think, like especially.
I don't know if I found her to be terrifying or anything in that respect.
Not terrifying. I think that's maybe a word.
It came off a tiny bit hammy for me, just because I'm not used to performances that are that big. And I don't know if it would have been regarded as well today as it was at the time, because she got a lot of praise for this performance, which again I can see why. But like I said, I wonder if today it would be like, all right, calm down a little bit. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Let me say this. I think in the mainstream sense, probably yes. But I do think the same performance would have had the same effect on niche cultures.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, because it is, as you see, it's very much about
a cult classic kind of movie. I think today than like this iconic. I mean, I don't know how successful it was at the time, but it got Academy Awards nomination, so it must have done something right. And I don't know if it would have gotten that today. I think it would have been more of a niche kind of smaller movie.
I don't know. I think because it comments on Hollywood, it would have always had that kind of. It would have broke out in that way, at least around Hollywood people. And it's for me. I was just kind of pleasantly surprised to know about, as I was researching it, all the praise that Gloria Swanson got for this role as Norma Desmond, because I was like, initially it seemed hammy and over the top till I realized that was what it was doing. But I'm assuming you didn't have any issue with that. Then you were just kind of on board with the performance and what it was saying.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any issues with the performance. I liked the performance actually a lot.
Okay, cool.
Probably my favorite performance in the movie. Spoiler alert for the later sections.
So you didn't find any of the dialogue to be kind of over the top or too unreal? It didn't take you out of the movie at all?
No, not at all.
Cool.
I mean,
okay.
Only the film noir voice.
Yeah, that part of things. Well, that's the next thing I was going to say. Actually, was that the film it does kind of employ a lot of cliches, like the sort of film noir tropes, or the idea of the young wholesome girl, the kept man, the fallen star. Which are all familiar to us now, but I think that's because this film helped define them. When you remember, it's from 1950 basically. So yes, I did kind of groan, like I said, at the idea of Betty falling for Joe, because of course that has to happen. But I was also really kind of very surprised, again in a pleasant way, when he's sort of what I read as being a bit noble, when he kind of lets Betty go and just says, "You go and have a nice life with the man you're engaged to," and then it prompts him to actually, still leave being Norma's kind of kept man in the comfort of all of that, because he realizes the unfairness of that as well. But again, he's not really, he's not particularly heroic or anything. I don't think the film wants anybody to be viewed like that. But yeah, there were moments, as I said, that kind of came off as a bit kind of dated in its regard to kind of the way people act or feminist views and things like that. And does anything like you come off as dated? Sorry, to you come off as dated or? Yeah.
I mean, not particularly more than anything regular from that time. Like, I don't think it's that bad at all. Like,
no.
Like,
okay.
I'm trying to think if there's like a major red flag where it's like, oh, but I don't think so. Like,
okay.
You have the general 50 stuff. Okay, like we can move past that. We know, but there isn't any. Like, there are movies out there from that time where you watch them and go, oh, that's not. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's really bad. I don't think there's anything like that in this one. I think it's perfectly fine of its time, and I didn't have any issues watching. I didn't have any moments where I was like, oh no.
I see. Yeah, because I don't know that the film is. I mean, obviously, it kind of does. It sees Norma as this kind of figure that's beaten down by the lack of celebrity and stuff, but I don't think it's necessarily a gender thing or anything like that. And like I said, even Betty, for the most part, I think is a well-written character until, like I said, the inevitable. Oh, of course, she's fallen for him, which I didn't like. But again, I think when you remember Billy Wilder, the director of this movie, also did Some Like It Hot, which is a surprisingly progressive movie for a film about, two men cross-dressing, basically. I think, as you said, for 1950, it's actually, I wouldn't really say progressive, but it's certainly not as bad as a lot of the
not offensive.
Yeah,
not exactly. Majorly offensive. It's
precisely
perfectly okay.
So yeah, I mean, in that regard, it's not. It doesn't fall into that kind of trap. But cliche-wise, I don't know. Was there anything that you picked up that you thought, oh, this is just something I've seen a load of times as well?
I feel like the only thing that was a little cliche for me was when, I mean, you called out when she inevitably falls for him. I was more cliched by later when that he leaves and then like 2 hours later comes back and they have sex and it's like, oh, okay, wow.
I see. Yeah.
That was my okay.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I think that's a really uncomfortable thing, because that's also like she's kind of manipulated the situation almost, but she still is a victim, because she at that point she'd trigger warning, she'd slit her wrists and everything and been suicidal, and so you can't sort of look at her as, oh, this is a horrible thing to have done, because obviously to reach that point you've got to be emotionally drained and everything else, but at the same time you do kind of see her as using that to her advantage as a way to kind of keep him trapped as well, which, as you said, is but there's no kind of good part on either side there. She's manipulating the situation, but he certainly should not have been like, oh, well, I'll stay here and sleep with you then, so nobody comes out of it especially well,
They kind of did to each other. Yeah. I mean, clearly you don't threaten with suicide to get someone to sleep with you. Like, that's not okay. But also, if someone is suicidal and clearly desperate, please don't sleep with them.
Yeah.
If they try
exactly.
to get you to do that, like they're not in a good state of mind. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
both
And I mean,
needed to leave this situation.
oh, definitely. I mean, but I can kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say, just walk away and leave the situation. But at the same time, it makes it very clear that she is weaponizing this when she sort of says, like, oh, if you leave, I'll finish the job and everything. And you're just kind of like, all right, hang on. You can't do that to people. You know what I mean? That's very manipulative and evil, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, talking about that. Anyway, that was
to be fair, I mean, it's clear she has mental health issues. So,
oh yeah,
really, he should have been the person to go, okay, wait a minute, like,
yeah. Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's the thing.
Not to excuse her actions, but clearly she has issues. Like,
yeah, that is the one thing that it's not very progressive about, is the view of kind of mental health. But again, I think it's more, excuse me, it's more kind of both the fact that it's set in 1950 and it's kind of Hollywood. So it's sort of swept under the rug, and all you get is, well, the doctor said remove all the sharp objects and things, take all the locks off the doors, because she has, I forget what they call it, but all these fits of melancholy or whatever they describe it as,
yeah,
which is such a weird kind of euphemism. And even when she's kind of done the deed and she's slit her wrists and she's ended up in bed bandaged up, and the doctor's been, the fact that the butler is like, well, you don't see anything, the musicians should not know about this, we have to keep it hidden. And I'm like, really? That's kind of,
I mean,
yeah, but
to be fair, the state of mental clinics at the time, like, probably the doctor's advice, like, do not tell anyone about this, because she's going to get into a clinic and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I can kind of get that in a practical sense, even though she should have gotten help, but the help at the time wouldn't have been that great either. So
that's a fair point. I hadn't realized that. I was reading it more as like, oh, she wouldn't want the shame of it, and she's so image conscious that she really wouldn't want that getting out, because it could, it would.
That's probably also a part of it.
It would be looked on negatively, and she would be looked down on for it, kind of thing, as well. But you are absolutely right, as well, as you said. If she wasn't rich and famous and didn't have the people coming to her aid that can keep this hidden, she probably would have ended up in a 1950s asylum, which would have been a horrible situation as well, obviously. So, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, talking about the kind of, as we were touching on it there, one of the things I did kind of, as I said, note about the film and kind of liked is the moral ambiguity of it, instead of the kind of neat arcs, which you don't get a lot of these days. Because, like I said, I mean, Joe isn't really a hero, even when he does the odd heroic seeming thing. Norma Desmond isn't purely a victim. Okay, she is at times, because she's kind of been beaten down by the celebrity idea. But as you say, she's also kind of monstrous and horror villainy. And then you have Max, the butler, who's he's tragic when you find out his backstory, that he's her kind of first husband and the man that made her famous as a director. But he's also just terrifying and disturbing as a character. He's very kind of lurch or ego kind of thing, and yeah, and there's no kind of one character that gets a clean redemption, really. And I admire that about the script, that it just lets people unravel and doesn't feel the need to present you with any heroes at the end of it. Do you kind of agree with that? And do you think the script was hardest on anybody particularly?
I mean, yeah, that I'm trying to think if there's any person that's like pretty good in this, but no. Even you didn't mention her now, but even Betty is like trying to cheat on her fiance, so that's not great either.
Yeah,
like, it's certainly the least worst things of this movie, I'd say.
Yeah,
from the main characters, but still not great. Still not okay.
No, I mean, as you said, there is still a sort of, without wanting to be too judgy, in 1950 it still would have been regarded as, she'd be considered a floozy for, being engaged and being with another man. But regardless, I don't think she's particularly a main character as such anyway. So she kind of just flits in and out of the narrative as needed.
I mean, yeah, she's okay, fair. I think, I mean, it's the least, I said it's the least worst thing. Betty has done the least worst thing in this movie, but she also gets the least harsh treatment of this movie. Like it's more like a, no, don't do that. You shouldn't. You really shouldn't. And it's kind of done with that. Like, I don't know if that would have worked today. Like, if someone is trying to cheat and it's just like, no, you shouldn't. Then okay, then it's okay. Like, you just marry this guy and we're not going to tell him. It's like, no,
I've seen similar things, to be fair. The whole idea of like the tragic, I've fallen for you and I shouldn't have, but it's okay, I've got to be with somebody else. And
I mean,
nothing happens. I mean, they don't really have like a full-on affair or anything in it. And like I said, it gives you a chance, even though it's a bit kind of sexist in itself, to have it be the motivation for a male character. It gave Joe Zuri a chance to be noble for a bit there and to be like, no, you go and stay with. And you initially think, oh, he's just resigning himself to being stuck with Norma forever, but no, he doesn't. He sends her to still be with her fiancée Betty, and then also says, "But I'm leaving this situation because it's not fair on anybody." So yeah. As you say, it's good that he does come to that realization, but I don't think you can ultimately call him still noble and heroic because he's taken advantage of Norma a lot by that point, basically.
First that, and second, if you're going to even call him heroic in that situation, then he should have said that to the husband that happened. Like,
yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
But that's, I guess, modern sensibilities. Like,
yes, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, I think it is, as we look on it, more modern like that. Yeah, for sure. Fair enough. The very last thing I have about the writing then is just, as I said, I really love the ending of this movie. I think it's the ultimate kind of statement that the writing's trying to make, that Norma just fully retreats into fantasy. Joe is literally erased, killed, and Hollywood wins. It's completely swept over and taken over Norma's mind and reality, and everything is now, in a very meta kind of postmodern way, almost everything is now the film, and it ends with, us watching her watching us kind of thing, which is, for me, very, very surprisingly progressive for a 1950 movie in the way that it presents, audience voyeurism, I think, in that way. And again, lovely lines about that, how she was ready for the cameras that would never turn. And then again, at the end, I love the line about, oh, it's just us and the cameras and the people out there in the dark, which again invites the audience to kind of reflect on their own, perhaps, role in, building these people up and perhaps leaving them a bit behind at the end of it. And again, the film has another bit of dialogue about, oh, I didn't want to leave her behind because 30 million people already had, and etc. etc. So yeah, I just think the ending feels like the film sort of acknowledging that the madness has swept in, and the madness of Hollywood is not necessarily overly all glamour, and there's no real pulling back from it, which I think emphasizes the almost horror, like I said, the horror thriller aspect of it. What are your thoughts on the ending, just generally? Did you like it, or do you not?
I mean, I love the ending, and the ending is probably the main thing that really bumped up the score for me. I'm going to say from what to what in the end, like in what way.
Oh yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah.
We keep that secret for now, but the ending was really the one thing that bumped up the score by quite a bit for me, because I thought it was really, really good, and it kind of invites you to think about, like, it invites you to think about how you thought during the movie and how that relates to how you think about celebrity culture nowadays. I mean, it was crazy back in the past as well, but like it's really crazy now with parasocial relationships and all that, and how it just invites you to think about that. Because I think the movie kind of wants you to enjoy Norma just being a little crazy. Like, you're just kind of like, oh, that's kind of funny, it's weird, that's haha. And in the end, it's like, it's not funny actually. Like, it shouldn't be fun. Maybe the word is, it shouldn't be funny, or at least it's not only funny. It's also kind of scary, and she clearly has issues, and you don't maybe see that necessarily from the outside. You don't really get the whole picture always. I mean, in the beginning, you just think, oh, this is like this weird lady, she's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And it only unfolds as the movie goes on until the end, and I feel like even before the end, there's still like a few percentage points that are held back from her, how crazy she really is. And I think that the movie just kind of invites you to think about how you view certain funny videos or breakdowns of celebrity nowadays as well.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah.
how that's always like, that's funny. Like
Yeah.
she attacked a reporter or something, threw a
Yeah.
shoe at someone. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like,
No,
that's funny, but is it funny?
I completely agree, and I think that's the film. The film is basically saying that, and I think it's interesting that when you first meet Norma, that it's going for those laughs by the whole kind of the key scene there being the monkey funeral. You know, she's holding a funeral for her monkey, and you are supposed to laugh at that as a kind of darkly comic idea. And as you said, the way that it starts off, you feel like the movie's basically inviting you to like you said, laugh at her and mock her for kind of, oh, she can't adjust to everyday life. Look at this silly woman that's, you know.
I mean, also that she has all these pictures of herself. That's also supposed to be funny. Like, look how self-obsessed this woman is. Like, she has all these pictures of herself. That's weird. Like, who would do that?
Yeah.
She's so self-absorbed. And all that, it's supposed to be funny. And
yeah.
I mean, of course, this movie is very over the top in Norma as a character. Like, I don't think she like exists like that in real life. Maybe she does, but probably not. But you never know. But I don't think it just wants to reflect on people that are actually this level of delusional. But there's also like just people celebrities that are like regular levels of delusional. I don't know.
Yeah,
not regular levels, but like.
Yeah, most celebrities of that kind, especially actors, would have to have a certain degree of narcissism and vanity anyway. But she takes it to the extreme where you're just supposed to be like, oh, look, she can't detach from images and everything. I think that's actually a very savvy observation, like you said, is that the film starts off making Norma almost a figure of ridicule and this kind of, you know, black, dark humor. But then at some point you're like, no, this is actually kind of tragic. She's been left behind by people who don't give a crap about her well-being because she was only, you know, she was just an image on a screen to them, and it was everything to her, and nobody's really regarding. I mean, obviously, to a degree, you can't be that, you know, caring about it because it's like, well, oh, boo-hoo, you've been hugely famous and you've now got tons of money, and at least you got a chance to be. But like you said, it also kind of does say a lot about our celebrity culture, which reflects even more strongly in, you know, in the year 2026 about the way that we treat celebrities and the way that we think we're entitled to, you know, laugh at them not being able to adjust when it's kind of our fault as the people that built them up, and, you know, to a degree the audience as the ones that have been there and, you know, celebrated them and are now mocking them. And as you say, partway through you kind of realize the tragedy of that. The film presents you with that, and then along with that also presents you the horror of like what happens when you literally have people that can't adjust to change, you know, progress in the world, not being number one anymore, things like that. And it can get scary. Obviously, we've seen real life situations like that. So, yeah,
especially if you don't have either any kind of support system, or in this case, more like that your support system is enabling your behavior.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is key as well, as you said, because I was very shocked by the reveal of like her butler is the man that made her famous as a director and her first husband. And now he's kind of, I presume it's intended to be viewed as a kindness, but it's also kind of cruel what he's doing in the attempts to be kind to her, because he's keeping her in the delusion of like, oh, these fan letters, you've still got fans and all the rest of it. And you're just kind of like, no, you're contributing to the madness. That's not healthy. You know?
Yeah. And he keeps that up until the very end. Like there's not one point where he's like reflecting on that. It's like, no, he keeps that delusion up even as she gets arrested. He's not like, let me try to get some sense. I don't know. Like they are doing this whole stage show thing where she's like, where her arrest is basically a movie scene she's filming now.
Yeah, as I said, because I think at that point her mind is so gone, she can only view everything as movies, especially considering she probably knows what she's done in terms of killing a guy and, you know, the guilt of all of that. But yeah, it's fascinating to look at the Max character, because you have to wonder, like, is he kind of the victim that's been made subservient by her, you know, sort of higher role in status when she was famous, or is he even scarier as the kind of man that's contributing to keeping her in living the delusion and everything by, like you said, writing these fan letters and keeping her supposedly sheltered for her own good, but ultimately it's not for her own good. It's, it's letting her still believe the stuff, and the whole idea of, going to Paramount and thinking she's being asked to be in this movie, and then the tragedy of, no, they just want to rent your car. And like, oh no, this is going to destroy her, but nobody has the kind of common sense to think, but you're going to have to sit her down and tell her about reality at one point or another. It's not healthy to make her think, oh, they might be calling for me because I'm so great. It's like, sit her down and be like, no, love, your time has passed. Even though she does give the whole, like, if it wasn't for me, there'd be no Paramount Pictures. It's like, you've kind of got to snap out of that, love.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point that makes him also an evil character, is that there's no attempt to even do that.
Exactly.
Because I can clearly see how during that time it would have been very difficult to get her out of that. But there's no attempt here, and there's also no showing of like, oh, I tried in the past, but I just given up or something. There's nothing like that. Like we can assume from this movie that he just was enabling her delusions from the beginning. Like,
exactly, yeah. Exactly, and as you said, it's kind of whatever the motivations are. It certainly seems to be presented as kind of he's a very, I'd say, almost horror movie kind of grotesque kind of character. But yeah, so we'll kind of leave the writing behind. But I will ask just before we do that if there's anything else that you wanted to bring up about the writing, or any particular favorite kind of lines or moments that stuck in your mind.
No, I think we covered all of it.
We did. We got into quite a lot, which I think it's a dense film, so there's lots we could talk about with the writing. But again, I don't want to take too long just on that. So I'll move to the next bit, which will be the acting. So starting with obviously the main actor or actress in this case. According to Billy Wilder, he asked George Cukor for advice on casting, and it was him who suggested Gloria Swanson, who was one of the most feted actresses of the silent screen era, known for her beauty, talent, and extravagant lifestyle. In many ways, I think quite tellingly, she resembled the Norma Desmond character. Like her, she'd been unable to make a smooth transition into talking pictures, but unlike Norma, she had accepted the end of her film career, and in the early 30s, she moved to New York, where she worked in radio. In the mid-40s, she worked in TV and on the New York stage. And though she wasn't seeking a movie comeback, she did become intrigued when Wilder discussed the role with her. She was glad for the opportunity to earn a greater salary than she was making on TV and on stage, but she was annoyed at the notion of submitting to a screen test, saying she had, quote, made 20 films for Paramount. Why do they want me to audition? Her reaction was echoed in the screenplay, as I mentioned, when Norma declares, without me, there wouldn't be any Paramount Studios. In her memoir, Swanson recalled asking Cukor if it was unreasonable to refuse the screen test. He replied that since Norma Desmond was the role for which she'd be remembered, quote, if they ask you to do 10 screen tests, do 10 screen tests, or I will personally shoot you. His enthusiasm convinced Swanson to participate. Shouldn't laugh at that, but it is weirdly humorous. And in a 1975 interview, Billy Wilder recalled Swanson's reaction with the observation, there was a lot of Norma in her, So, yeah. Yeah. It's,
I mean, I think it's cool that he was so convinced in this role, so confident about this movie. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, obviously, like, I shoot you is a little, but I don't know. I think that's kind of cool that he was so convinced.
But she had somebody who was prepared to kind of bring her back to reality in a way that nobody was for Norma Desmond, when he was just like, yo, get over your, vanity with all of this thing and do freaking screen tests because it's going to be worth it,
It's a really good role, and it seemed like she was clearly convinced by the part before, and she was just like, oh, I don't want to screen test. Like, no, you do that.
Yeah.
You're going to get the role, and you like the role, so why wouldn't you want to do a screen test? Like, do it. Just do it.
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, I've already kind of mentioned a lot of the things that I was initially a bit wary of. The fact that she seems very broad and big because she's not behaving like a real person. She's a movie star that never stopped acting. But that's the point. I think, like I said, the idea is that her exaggerated speech, her big gestures, her angry rants and everything are her living inside of a silent movie, or a movie where she has to project, because that's what sort of film stars kind of do. So I've already kind of said, did you take the time to adjust to that idea? And you'd said, no, not really. But related to that, I did want to ask if you were aware, because I didn't know who Gloria Swanson was, no offense to her, RIP. But do you think it does add something, even without knowing that she really was an actual silent film star? And there are scenes where you're actually watching her kind of silent movies. So she kind of lived this experience. Do you think that shows through in the film?
I mean, I think at least now knowing that, I think I look at her performance and go, oh, that makes sense that they cast her, because that's why she's so good in this, or probably a reason why she's so good in this part is because of that, because she has these over the top like facial movements and all that, and clearly because she has done that before in silent movies, so
yeah,
she can really act the part. I mean, but to be fair, she's so good in this movie. I'm kind of shocked that she didn't have a movie career past silent films. I'm like, how? Like,
yeah.
Like, is it just that she was so typecast in this movie that, and she couldn't really act in anything else, and it was just like this was the perfect pick, and because like,
yeah,
if she
this
could
was kind
act
of the
that
end
good to in other movies, it's like, why wasn't she cast? Like, what was going on?
This was kind of the end point of her career by this point, because I mean it was 1950, so it was well after the kind of switch from silent movies to sound. And I think it's one of those things where, I mean, you see it in a lot of movies. It's part of the plot of like Singing in the Rain and stuff, that the kind of transition from silent to what they call talkies just left a lot of people behind, because it was a completely new art form. And I mean, again, we see this in lots of ways as society progresses and technology develops and stuff. Some people do just get left behind, sometimes because they can't keep up or can't perform fully, and sometimes just because they're too stubborn to want to. A lot of the silent film stars were like, well, I refuse to be part of this gimmicky idea of talking because it's not necessary, and yeah, it does. Again, it reflects perhaps attitudes towards other things nowadays, special effects or AI or whatever, where some people just would refuse to do it because, well, why should we? There's nothing wrong with the way things are done. So even though it seems ridiculous to us, as we're kind of like, well, why wouldn't you want sound in a movie? But,
yeah, fair. It's just at least from a performance standpoint, I looked at it and go like, surely the reason can't be that people didn't think she was a good performer because there were cases where people were so equipped just for silent movies that they were not great performers in talking movies. That happened. But at least based on this performance, I mean, obviously this performance is infused by silent films because of the role, but I just cannot see that based on this performance how that would be the case.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It feels like it should have at least perhaps led to more of a renaissance of her career, which it didn't, but it became what she was known for, and certainly it got a lot of praise, and it did what it was intended to, I suppose, in that regard. But as I say, I think it was perhaps a perfect storm of the idea that it is just so meta, because it is very much her reflecting on herself in a lot of ways, which the movie does a lot, Hollywood reflecting Hollywood. To that end, I have to say, in the movie, Wilder harks back to Swanson's silent film career when Norma shows Joe the film Queen Kelly, because that's actually a genuine earlier Gloria Swanson film, which was directed by Erich von Stroheim, who is the guy who actually portrays Max von Meiling in the movie, and the guy that now works as a butler. So again, weirdly meta kind of stuff. And again, if you want to kind of see an example of perhaps Gloria's similarities to Norma Desmond, the film Queen Kelly wasn't released in the US for over 50 years because Swanson walked off the set. It's weird to think she's literally Gloria Swanson showing her movies as this movie star's kind of career history. So she's showing her own lived experience, as you said, which I think, even if you don't know she's got that career, it really does add so much more, I think, to the movie, because I personally just sense that lived experience and that kind of idea of, even if she wasn't obviously as bitter and horrific as Norma Desmond, she still lived that, and there was still a sort of nostalgia and a sort of rose-tinted view of the past of those silent movies. Did you pick up on that, or is that just me?
I mean, I would definitely say I pick up on that, but maybe not in as much of a major impact way as for you.
Okay, cool.
But I do think for example, I didn't really know that this was like I didn't know all the meta layers until now, like that it was actually like a real her movie that they were showing, and that the director also from the movie back then played a role. Like I didn't know all that. So
yeah, there's lots of moments like that. I'll get into some of them as well in the movie where it is Hollywood, like literal Hollywood, you know, the actual actors that are seen during the bridge scene and everything. They're playing bridge with her and stuff. But I mean, do you think the film works regardless of that meta knowledge? Did you kind of, now that you know this, do you think it adds a layer, or do you think it worked anyway?
I think it works anyway, as long I feel like the most difficult probably would be that you need to get into the mindset of the transition from silent movies to talking movies. I think that's the one thing you need to tune yourself into. But I think once you do that, I think all the other meta layers, I don't want to say are unnecessary, but you don't need to know them to enjoy this movie. I think you only really need to be aware of that change in some capacity and be able to feel yourself into that change.
For sure. Yeah, and I think since we're, before we move on from the main star, from Glorious Once, and I have to say I think it is an incredible performance, because you feel sorry for her when you're supposed to. You feel the sadness. You feel kind of hatred towards her when she's being her most kind of vindictive and seemingly like she's got Joe held captive. And there are times, like the really famous scenes of her, the way that she holds herself and she almost seems to grimace, where for me she comes off almost like a kind of universal monster when it's obviously supposed to be reflecting like she's almost a horror character as well. This tragic figure is, it's not to be looked at with anything other than perhaps even fear at that point, because it's a scary thought and a scary image, and she portrays, I think, all of that really beautifully, especially like as I say, I think it emphasizes it even more once you know that it is her career and these are actually her headshots and pictures that she's got and they're her movies that she's watching and things. But yeah, I know there were bits of Norma Desmond in her, but I would imagine she's a lot more well adjusted. She certainly seems to have been, and very grateful for this opportunity anyway at the end of her career. So, and yeah, great performance. Even if I thought it was over the top at first, I realized that's exactly the point. That's what it was doing, and she's exactly giving what she was supposed to. So yeah, love it.
Kind of shocking that she didn't win the Oscar for this, in my opinion. Like, I don't know what was else on it, but I have a hard time imagining something was better.
I mean, this performance that certainly has lasted longer, been more remembered, and stood the test of time is definitely Glorious Wanson's. So ultimately, I think that's the big victory there, even if without winning the actual award, because neither of us have heard of the actual winner. So no offense. So yeah, moving to the next sort of actors, I'll try and get through them as quick as I can, because there's not a lot of people in this, but and we've kind of talked a little bit about the impact that they have in terms of the writing and stuff. So yeah, William Holden obviously plays Joe Gillis, the kind of grounding force. As I said, he's not a hero, but he is the more naturalistic character who feels more modern by comparison, more than what we're used to in movies. But he is compromised as a character throughout, and kind of he makes you feel for him a little bit sorry at times. At other times, you feel him as almost a villain. Somebody certainly who's out for himself and using people. But it's even though he does do that, he's probably emotionally healthier than Norma, and he is the one that finally shatters the illusions as well. So yeah, I mean, he's a victim and opportunist. He's a very layered character for 1950. Next, Max von Meyerling, of course, the quiet, creepy performance. As I said, very gothic and very kind of the horror prompting almost character, the way that he keeps Norma in this twisted reality from his own kind of sense of, I don't know, is it twisted love or whatever? He's tragic, he's sinister, he's everything of those kind of things together. All that kind of, does he reflect that the way that we kind of build up celebrities as being a horrific thing? You've got obviously Betty Schaefer and the normal kind of side of things. Not a really massive character, but she kind of, she does represent youth and ordinary things, and it gives you that contrast, even though she might be perhaps a little bit underwritten. And obviously, as I mentioned, the supporting cast are very, emphasizing the literal Hollywood mirror, because you've got Cecil B. DeMille playing himself, which is quite a shock. And I think he's actually really blooming good as an actor, considering he's not one. And the waxworks scene, or what they call the waxworks, the characters playing bridge with her, are her actual silent film contemporaries, Buster Keaton, Anna Q. Nilsson, and H.B. Warner. And at the end of the movie, Hedda Hopper, the gossip columnist, plays herself. A character, well, a person, I should say, that I'm familiar with through, I think, the TV show Feud gets into her sort of the way that she was around Hollywood types. She's a very interesting inclusion because she is very much the one that would, write the savage headlines and be looking for the kind of things that would ruin your career and the sort of salacious paparazzi-ish type stuff. And it's interesting that she appears playing herself at the end of the movie. So, I mean, these cameos, I think they show Hollywood haunting itself because they're echoes of what they once were as well. These other characters, these other actors. And yeah, I mean, does it pull you out of the film that they are real people? Or do you think it deepens the themes, or did you not even know?
I wasn't aware, so it didn't do much for it in any direction. Like I don't know these people.
Yeah, fair enough. If you're happy, then I'll move on to the directing because that's the next thing I have. So yeah, Billy Wilder was adamant that the corpse of Joe Gillis be seen from the bottom of the pool in that famous opening scene, but creating the effect was difficult. It was finally achieved by placing a mirror on the bottom of the pool and filming Holden's reflection from above. Now, to me, this, I think, obviously it's become a really famous scene. I've seen it kind of parodied and imitated in a million places. But it also feels like Wilder kind of announcing what kind of film it is, particularly when you hear it replaced, the scene where people had assumed it was going to be a dark comedy, because for me, this is basically Wilder saying it's artificial, it's stylized, it's an image of reality rather than actual reality, and it's fatal, that this is ultimately going to kill the guy, and we know it from the start. This distorted reality is going to end him. Did you like that opening scene? Did you pick up on any of this?
I mean, not on that deep level. I'm not the film student here.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Then in the end, it's like, well, we told you to take it seriously, and like, kind of shows you the mirror. But I am not on the level of the mirror at the bottom by shooting it. It's the literal mirror holding in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few notes about the actual direction by Billy Wilder, but not a huge amount. Just that it shows his control, and I think where he puts the camera throughout is deliberate. So you've got the cool zoom in at the beginning in that scene to the corpse. Very deliberate close-ups to the open locks, I think, to emphasize that that they're not there because of Norma's state of mind. So they've all had to be taken away just to kind of remind you of that. Norma's always framed really high up, like a kind of statue or a gargoyle, and she's always the one that's in the power. She's always higher up than Joe, who's kind of the subservient, gigolo, I guess, to her, as we said. And Joe's often trapped in frames, doorways, and reflections as a kind of counter to that. And yeah, I mean, did you notice how often Joe feels boxed in, and that Norma always feels like she's kind of controlling the scenes and the frames, or even like subconsciously? Did you notice any of that or not?
I don't think so. I don't think I've noticed that way she's sure. I mean, I do think knowing that it probably definitely helped into the feeling of her as kind of scary, and so certainly it was effective.
Yeah, it does work. Yeah.
Watching go, oh, she's shut up always like
that. Yeah, I often noticed, and again, it was especially noticeable at the very end when she's at the very top of the balcony, whenever Joe kind of comes in and when he's seen Betty out, and then at the end when she's kind of committed the murder and everybody's there, she's always right up the very top. And I made that note. I was like, she's like a gargoyle, like just literally staring down at everything from this sinister position of false power, I guess. So, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people might say that Wilder's direction isn't subtle, but I don't think he's trying to be. I think that's the point, because by having the kind of heightened blocking and framing and over-the-top theatrical entrances and stuff, it all shows you that this is more of a kind of almost operatic story, and that kind of justifies the bigger performances and stuff that you get in this, and the bold symbolism and stuff, because, like I said, it's basically showing you Norma's world isn't real. It's not reality that any of us would recognize. It is just, it's a film made real in that way. So, yeah, I liked a lot of what Wilder does, I think, here. I'm going to move to the VFX production design because it's linked, and then I'll ask you at the end if there's anything that you think about generally to these two things together. So, in terms of cinematography and design, the film's dark, shadowy, black and white cinematography was the work of John F. Seitz. He recalled asking Wilder what he required for the pet chimpanzee's funeral scene, to which Wilder replied, just your standard monkey funeral shot. Hilarious. For some interior shots, Seitz sprinkled dust in front of the camera before filming to suggest mustiness. The film did have the option to be shot in color, but it was instead shot in black and white to supposedly be more reflective of the noir genre. I don't think that's entirely just the reason. I think it also strips away the glamour and reflects back to those, again, silent film days when you wouldn't have had kind of, color, technicolor glory and everything. And again, it's interesting that it leaves you with the contrast of Norma's world being gothic and shadowy and horror movie-ish, and then Joe's world being just the flat, ordinary, sunny Hollywood real world kind of thing. And again, I think the film kind of, it wants you to know that from the moment it has Joe point out, like, oh, this house looks like Miss Havisham in that Great Expectations novel. It's decaying, it's stuck in the past, it's this moldy thing that's clinging on when it shouldn't kind of thing. And yeah, I think, do you think the film would work in color, or do you think these things are more effective this way?
That's an interesting question, actually.
Okay.
I definitely think at least the parts that are focused on Norma work really well in black and white. I do think maybe a possibility would have been, I don't know if that was ever considered, to have it like kind of part this, part that. I don't know if that was even possible at all, technically possible. But
possibly, but I don't think they would have done it because it would have been way too jarring in 1950 to have like half black and white, half.
No, but at least for the Norma part, it definitely elevates it, and I think for the rest, it definitely doesn't hinder it in any way.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it adds so much more because, like I said, I think it adds to the mustiness and the kind of view to the past. For me, I liked it anyway. But yeah, so moving to the next part, Edith Head designed the costumes. Wilder, Head, and Swanson agreed that Norma Desmond would have kept somewhat up to date with fashion trends. So the costumes were designed to closely resemble the Dior look of the mid-40s. Swanson recalled in her biography that the costumes were only a trifle outdated, a trifle exotic. Head later described her assignment as the most challenging of her career and explained her approach with the comment, because Norma Desmond was an actress who'd become lost in her own imagination, I tried to make her look like she was always impersonating someone, which again, I think is a very telling comment, which reflects a lot of what I've picked up on, I think, anyway, with the character that she is living and performing. The overstated decadence of Norma Desmond's home was created by set designer Hans Dreyer, whose career extended to the silent era. William Haynes, an interior designer and former actor, later rebutted criticism of Dreyer's set design with the observation, Baby Daniels, Norma Shearer, and Paola Negri all had homes with ugly interiors like that. So again, it is kind of reflective of real life. And as I said, I think the mansion is kind of its own character. The way that it's not luxurious so much as it feels like it's preserving the past in this weirdly embalmed, kind of stagnant way, which reflects her character, I think, very appropriately as well. On the other hand, Wilder also uses authentic locales at times because Joe exists in actual Hollywood. So Norma's in the preserved fantasy and he's in reality. And that contrast, I think, does a lot of storytelling work without even having dialogue or anything like that. Wilder insisted the age difference between the characters be delineated and instructed makeup supervisor Wally Westmore to make Swanson look older. She argued that a woman of Norma Desmond's age with a considerable wealth and devotion to self wouldn't necessarily look old, and suggested that Holden be made up to appear younger instead. Wilder agreed, and Westmore was assigned this task, which allowed Swanson to portray Norma Desmond as more glamorous a figure than Wilder had originally intended. So, yeah. Any thoughts on any of the things I've mentioned there, that what works, what doesn't, or, what do you think is most and least effective?
I mean, first, I think that's interesting with Dimension, because I do kind of got the vibe that it almost has like a museum character, like it almost looks like, like you said, like preserved, like that. It's just, I mean, it looks like something that stands in Hollywood that you can now go into and look and go, this is how they lived, and it's nice and like all perfectly done up. And the second thing, that was a good note of her, because I think that makes a lot of sense, and that as part of keeping up the delusion, she obviously tried. I mean, as part of keeping up the delusion that she's still a star, she obviously always wanted to look star-like and keep up with the beauty trends and always be on top. So I think that totally makes sense that they made that decision to not make up her odor.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think it works even though it wasn't the kind of director's original intention, and even though she is a bit more glamorous, do you think it works to the character?
I think it's better that way.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's better that way because I think a person of her stardom living in the delusion that she's still a star, I don't think she would have just stayed in. I think her delusion was clearly less that she's still in the time, but more like that she has successfully made the transition and that she is still this huge name and she has still a huge career nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that's her delusion. So in that sense, it totally makes sense that she kept up with everything and with the clothes that she had more fitting clothes for the time, maybe slightly older because she's an older star in the movie, so that makes sense that it was like slightly outdated but also not too much, and that she kept up with like that they made her look the best as possible, that they didn't make to look older but just have a younger, because she would keep up with the beauty treatment, she would try to look that way to still be the star that she thinks she is still today.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it also, for me, it emphasizes as well the kind of, I don't want to say horror, but the kind of the sadness and the kind of horror, I guess, that you don't think about, where, you know, actors have to kind of always be looking their absolute best. And so when she thinks she has got the film role, she's going through all these kind of beauty treatments and stuff that look kind of horrible and, you know, painful to endure and stuff. And you're just kind of like, oh man, it must be a pain in the ass. And, you know, she's always talking about having to be on a diet and everything and look a certain way. And I think, yeah, it works on that level. But also I think at the very end, when she is kind of presented as the more grotesque character, it takes on a completely new fashion because she's so made up that it's kind of like, oh, wow, this false persona has completely taken her over, and it's a horrific thing as well. Yeah, anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. So you happy to move to the music and sound? I don't have much about that anyway. So
yeah.
So yeah, Franz Waxman, what a name, did the musical score. That was the final element added to the movie. His theme for Norma was based on tango music, inspired by her story about having danced the tango with Rudolph Valentino. This style was contrasted with Joe's bebop theme. Waxman also used distorted arrangements of popular film music styles from the 20s and 30s to suggest Norma Desmond's state of mind, which, again, I don't know if you pick up on consciously. I certainly didn't, but I think I did unconsciously, because I always felt a little bit sort of uneasy during those scenes. And again, it reflects the past in that way that's relevant. Did anything stand out to you at all?
No, not really with music. Like, no.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I can totally see how that subconsciously affected me, but I don't really have. Yeah. I don't know if it did, like, but I could totally see how it did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a music person. I'm an actual music sort of student or somebody that studies it would probably be able to tell you a lot more than I could. And, you know, feel free to, if you are that person, in the comments or anything, because it's not something I know enough about to really comment like an expert. But
I'm really bad with film music.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, well, yeah, with that out of the way, then I'm going to move us to our critics' response. As I said, we always do critics rather than audience response, because it always feels like asking audience opinions would be redundant when it's a classic film. So again, this is very interesting. And Tobi, you were I think you're looking forward to this because you were intrigued to learn how it was kind of viewed, I think, as well. So I'll jump straight in and say that the film was praised by many critics when it was first released. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, including nominations in all 4 acting categories, and won 3. It's often ranked among the greatest movies ever made. And get ready with your drinks, regular listeners, because as it was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the US Library of Congress in 1989, it was included in the first group of films selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, as has been 90% of the films we've looked at here. Review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes reports that 98% of critics give the film a positive review based on 112 reviews, with an average rating of 9.5 out of 10. The critical consensus states, arguably the greatest movie about Hollywood, Billy Wilder's masterpiece Sunset Boulevard is a tremendously entertaining combination of noir, black comedy, and character study. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 94 out of 100, based on 32 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Sunset Boulevard attracted a range of positive contemporary reviews from critics. Time described it as a story of Hollywood at its worst, told by Hollywood at its best, while Box Office Review wrote the picture will keep spectators spellbound. James Agee, writing for Sight and Sound, praised the film and said Wilder and Brackett were beautifully equipped to do the cold, exact, adroit, sardonic job they have done. Good Housekeeping described Swanson as a great lady who spans another decade with her magic, while Luck praised her brilliant and haunting performance. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that future generations would set themselves the task of analyzing the durability and greatness of the film. In a rare negative review, the New Yorker deemed it a pretentious slice of Roquefort cheese containing only the germ of a good idea. Likewise, despite praising it as a great motion picture with memorable acting, Thomas M. Pryor wrote in the New York Times that the use of the dead Joe Gillis as narrator was a plot device completely unworthy of Brackett and Wilder. Ouch. Retrospectively, in 1999, Roger Ebert described Swanson as giving one of the all-time greatest performances, but singled out von Stroheim's performance as Max as holding the film together. He included it in his great movies list, calling it the best drama ever made about the movies because it sees through the illusions. Pauline Kael described the film as almost too clever, but at its best in its cleverness, and also wrote that it was common to hear Billy Wilder called the world's greatest director. Leslie Halliwell gave it 3 out of 4 stars, stating incisive melodrama with marvelous moments, but a tendency to overstay its welcome, though the last scene is worth waiting for, and the malicious observation throughout is a treat. I was especially noting of that because you said very similar things, that it sort of the pace was a bit slower, but the ending made up for it. So certainly somebody agrees with you there, Tobi. And, film writer Richard Corliss describes Sunset Boulevard as the definitive Hollywood horror movie, noting that almost everything in the script is ghoulish. And as I said, I fully agree. I think there's a lot of Norma Desmond almost as a universal monster. I think at times the way she's moving and framed, and like I said, the way she grimaces almost and stuff is, it's very horror reminiscent to me. So anything there surprising, Tobi, at all? Or?
I mean, again, I'm not surprised by the reviews. I think I'm just more surprised how the reviews ended up in the end of how beloved this film is.
Yeah.
Like, I think the reviews are very positive, and they are very positive for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, like, this is from Wikipedia. It's like in 1998 was ranked number 12 on the American Film Institute list of the 100 best American films of the 20th century. And like number 12 of the best movies. I'm like, this is not.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I like this movie, but I mean, I don't know if there are. I probably can't name 11 better ones, but I just feel like they probably are.
Yeah, I can see why it's got that reputation, and I certainly can see why it would make that kind of list. And 12's not hugely high, but I think to a degree it is, certainly. I think because Hollywood just likes films about Hollywood as well to that degree. So fair enough. Before I jump into our kind of thoughts, our favorite things, and our conclusions, I do have one bit of audience response, because I did promise our friend Jenny, who was supposed to be here, that I would read out her thoughts on the film. So apologies that we couldn't have Jenny as a full-on guest, but she did leave me just a quick paragraph on our Discord. She said about the film, I really love the desperation and toxic loneliness personified in Norma Desmond. Max von Meyerling's character deserved far more development than he got. The cameo by Cecil B. DeMille is insane, and by today's standards, the best comparison would be the studio. The best moment is, of course, the descending down the staircase at the end, a true classic. Actually, I'm not familiar with the studio, so I'll have to take her word for that.
Either, but I know a lot of people love it. I want to get to it someday.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll move to the next bit. We're about to end this as we kind of go on. So we just, as it's one of my kind of silver screens, I always like to sort of chime in with our favorite character moment and line. And Tobi, you must be used to this by now, so hopefully you've come prepared. So first of all, do you have a favorite character in the movie and why?
I mean, it's Norma Desmond, and there's no arguing about that. I think.
Fair enough, just because she's so impactful, I guess. Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment or scene?
Moment or scene? That's interesting. I think that it's less one scene, more like a kind of collection of scenes in the beginning. Not in the beginning, but not at the very beginning when we first meet Norma, but when kind of the life starts to happening, there are a few scenes that kind of reveal what is actually happening behind the scenes with her, and I think that's just really sad how that unfolds.
Okay, so yeah, more
it's,
kind
it's
of
like it's like a collection of like 2, 3, 4 scenes back to back.
Yeah, kind of like an extended montage of just the reality of everything. I think is what you're probably saying there. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, fair enough. And do you have a favorite line or quote from the film at all?
I mean, I guess you could use the end quote because it's too iconic not to mention.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And it is also like the end is also an incredible scene. Like I could have also used that for best scene, but I wanted to choose something else than the obvious, because naming the end scene as like, oh, it's the best scene, okay, but I wanted to highlight something else. That's why I didn't. But like, yeah, the end is incredible, and the famous last line is famous for a reason.
Okay, cool.
I'm trying to think if there's like a different line that I would want to highlight, but I can't think of any right now.
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff, as I say, and I've kind of referenced a lot as we went on. I can't remember them off by heart now, but the idea of like, now the parade had passed her by, and so many people, 30,000 people had already left her behind, and even the idea of like once, rather than caring about her own feelings as such, the butler, when he says, it devastated me a bit when he says, "Oh, the headlines would kill her," and I'm kind of like, well. Ouch. My favorite character moment line isn't going to be anything hugely surprising or different from yours. My favorite character, I did struggle to separate Norma and Joe, but ultimately I've got to go for the less naturalistic but more iconic and impactful performance. So naturally it was Norma for me as well. Not a character to necessarily emulate, but certainly the most interesting, I think, in the film. My favorite moment was the ending. I don't think it's a cop out as such. I think the impact is a real gut punch, and it really does hit effectively, so it works for me. And my favorite line isn't from the ending; it's from earlier in the film, but it's a line that I knew about going in, and it really works in context. And it's Norma's response to Joe saying she used to be big. I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Yeah, that was a good one as well.
Yeah, sure. A great line. It kind of sums things up, I think, there. So yeah, let's land this plane then. All that's left is our conclusions and our score out of 5. Did you want to go first, Toby?
Yeah. I think just to name another scene that I think is great. I think when she goes into the film studio and the director just leaves her alone in the studio, and the way she just kind of communicates with everyone there, like she just commands the room immediately. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting.
It's another kind of tragic moment as well when Jamil, the director, when he's like, get those lights where they belong, to kind of like stop, taunting this woman with, the false reality that she's this important kind of thing almost. So it is also another sad and tragic moment, I think.
And this one light guy that then just puts lights on her, probably just like as a nice thing, just a cute little whatever. And she just immediately like soaks it up and is like, I am the star. And it's like, oh wow.
Yep. Moments that really enhance the performance as well. Yeah. For sure. Cool. Do you have an actual conclusion then, or anything you wanted to point out before you score?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, the ending is really what elevates this movie a lot from. Before the ending, I had this movie at I have to 3.5 out of 5. That's why I had it before. Like that's where I kind of thought I was going to be at, like let's say, like 2/3 of the movie. That's where my mind was while watching. And I think mainly it is because there is some drag in there, in some pacing issues in the middle part, as we already discussed, and you kind of left waiting while watching is to go, is there something more than this? And I thought, okay, if there isn't something more than this, then it's a good movie, but it always kind of left me wanting it to take the extra step. And then it ultimately in the ending does. It's like, okay, now we got it. Now we got where it needed to be. I mean, still like slight deductions for the pacing issues and kind of the film noir elements that maybe don't work as well as they maybe should have been. Not that it's nothing that's like majorly ruin this movie, but it's like little deductions that kind of add up, which is why I kind of left it at, I mean, you always saw it at 4.5 out of 5. Like these little things just added up.
Yeah, okay. No, I think that's more than fair. Absolutely 4.5 out of 5. Very good score. I'll give you my conclusion and score again. Sorry, it's a bit of a film essay, but I tried to get my thoughts out. I just said I can see exactly how Sunset Boulevard became iconic. Even though I'd never seen it before, I already knew several of the famous lines and moments, and now I understand why they permeated the zeitgeist. In context, they land with real force. I personally do love films where Hollywood reflects on itself, especially the Golden Age. And while this may not be the sharpest or most intricate example of that tradition, it's still really bloody good. I admire the restraint, a small cast and essentially 2 storylines intertwined. That focus does have a downside, though. At times, the film can feel a little sloggy, perhaps a touch too long, although that might simply be modern pacing sensibilities talking. The story itself was gripping and played beautifully across the board. Gloria Swanson initially risks feeling too hammy, but it quickly becomes clear that's entirely the point. Norma Desmond is larger than life because she's still living as if she's inside a movie. It's hard to feel genuine sympathy for someone so unrelatable and still so materially fortunate, but the script and Swanson's performance do just enough to earn it. Some moments do register as cliche, but that feels more like hindsight than fault. These are ideas and images that have been endlessly imitated. I like that nobody's fully redeemed and actually kind of admire the film's ambiguity. I think it adds depth and reality rather than feeling non-committal. Ultimately, this isn't an easy watch or a particularly subtle or philosophically rigorous one, and its messaging can feel mixed. Still, it boasts supremely iconic performances, legendary direction from Billy Wilder, clever genre play, and a consistently engaging story. A very good, if not flawless, piece of classic cinema. And I unusually actually went a little bit lower than you. I gave it 4 out of 5. I just think a few of the things they didn't land with me the way perhaps they should have, and some of the more critical aspects I think dragged it a little bit further down the the pacing issues and the fact that it did seem a little bit cliche at times and a little tiny bit too over the top perhaps. So yeah, I mean, putting those scores together, dividing by the 2 of us here, it's not really that hard to work out. Gives a final score for Sunset Boulevard of 4.25 out of 5. So absolutely not too shabby. Still a very highly regarded cinema classic. I don't think anybody's going to be too mad at us for that. Hopefully, Toby. So,
no, I'm totally happy with that score.
Yeah.
I mean,
I am too, because I think you were kind of thinking you might be a tiny bit too high. I was thinking I might be a tiny bit too low. So it feels like exactly in the middle is a perfect compromise. 4.25 for the 2 of us. So
yeah. It's less than I thought. I was might be just too high. I just thought like the amount of criticism I maybe have, or maybe that it would seem like it would be more of an issue for me when it really wasn't. It was just smaller things that just was like, oh, okay, that could have been done better, but it was nothing that really took any majorly away from the movie. It was just additions that it's like, okay, maybe we could have gone without that, maybe we could have done that a little bit different. But at the end of the day, it didn't take away any of the impact of it at all. So
well, you said to me during our sort of discussion off air, the vibes kind of make up for the flaws for you, because they were strong enough that it kind of didn't matter as much. But for me, I think it was probably the opposite. Those vibes didn't fully hit, but that's perhaps, again, that could be just because I was expecting something huge because of the reputation, or because, like I said, looking at it through a modern lens, the film is, like I said, at times a little bit slow paced and a little bit cliche. But either way, I mean, still very good. And like I said, you can't complain about that score. So hopefully, anyway. So yeah, that's going to round things up here for today. So just remains for me to thank so much Toby for being the person that came to my rescue and my one co-host here for today. Thanks again, but
thanks for having me back for a cinema classic.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. And you've got your name down for a lot of future upcoming podcasts, so I'm sure people will be
a lot of cinema classics this year.
Exactly, yeah. Well, why not extend? Part of it is to extend mine and my friends' kind of broader range of movies. So hopefully it'll do that, and hopefully you enjoyed watching this. Considering it was a film that came out of nowhere, I think the fact that you gave it a 4.5 out of 5, it certainly seems like something you enjoyed. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely something I enjoyed, and definitely something I might. Well, I'm not a huge rewatcher, but definitely I'm a rewatcher if I watch something with a person that hasn't seen it, and it's definitely something I would show someone. So
cool. That's high praise. Awesome. Did you have anywhere that people can find you online? Anything you wanted to plug or anything before we go?
I mean, as always, Blue Sky.
Dark Sonic, isn't it, at bluesky.social or whatever. So
yeah,
that'll always be in the episode description along with all of our details, because again, you can always you can find us by following the link tree in the episode description or waiting till our outro, which also provides you this information. And again, do check out any of our social media pages, which you can find listed there, or check us out on TeePublic for our merch store. And, you can even subscribe to our channel for as little as $2.99 a month and get some cool perks and things if you so desire it, if you enjoy what we're doing here and you wanted to contribute a little bit to help keep us going. So, yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. It was a bit of a rush job, but I think it's ended up really good, and we've had some good insights for you. So, hopefully you've enjoyed this one and come back. We will be doing this again next month. Cinema Classics is a monthly thing. So join us next month when things get musical as we look at the iconic and famous film Fiddler on the Roof. So, yeah, a big one to look at there, a good long 3-hour movie to examine. But, thanks again to Tobi for joining us. Thanks to you for listening. We'll catch you next time for that episode. And for now, all right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Cinema Classics show, part of the Silver Screen podcast. Cinema Classics is hosted, produced, researched, scripted, and edited by Michael Wilson. Follow us on social media, our YouTube channel, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Links to all of these places can be found via the link tree in each episode's description. This podcast is a Media Matters original production created by Mike Wilson. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share far and wide. Join us again next time, and hopefully this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Here's looking at you, kid. Cut!